Hey guys, so today we're going to be learning about SI units and how to convert between different prefixes within the SI units. So SI units are really just metric units, that are used within science, and so the SI units are what we call the International System of Units, and I do need you to know what units are used for what particular base quantity. There's a lot of them on here, and the only ones that I really want you to focus on are these right here, what we call the SI base units, and you actually don't even need to worry about a few of them right now because it's just not used in our space science. So don't really worry about luminous intensity, but the rest are good to know, and even really the amount of substance in moles we don't use in Earth space, but I still like you to know it because you'll use it later on in chemistry. A lot of these here, don't worry about. I'm going to teach you a way to do this, so don't worry about that. So this is what we're looking at right now. So we call these the SI base units, and what we're going to be doing in just a second is converting between different prefixes within each base unit. So length is in meters, and you also want to know the symbol for meters, which is m. It's a lowercase m. Mass is in kilograms or grams. That's really the base unit is in grams, so you can learn it that way. Time is seconds, lowercase s for the symbol. Your current, for electrical current, you don't need either. So I'll cross that out so you don't have extra stuff to memorize. But you do want temperature, amount of substance, time, mass, and length. Temperature is Kelvin, K. And amount of substance is mole, and the symbol for that is MOL. So just make sure you know those that I checked off, and the ones I crossed off you don't have to worry about. Next, after you've learned your base quantity and the unit and symbol that goes along with that, you're going to be learning this, which is how to go between prefixes within the metric scale. So, what are these prefixes used for? Prefixes are great because they are helping us get to a better unit for a particular measurement. So what does that look like? If I ask you to measure the length of a piece of paper, would you use kilometers? No, right? A kilometer is so big that the number would not make sense. It would just be way too small. If I had you, and to answer that, you would use something like centimeters instead, right? Well, kilometers and centimeters or centimeters, those are two different prefixes that are attached to meter to give us a better unit of measurement for a particular measurement within a lab, or just in science in general. What happens if you're trying to measure the distance that you're driving in a car and you're going from Florida to New York? Are you going to use centimeters or micrometers, which are really small? No, right? Your number would be way too big and it just would not make sense. But instead you could use something like kilometers, which would make sense because it's more equivalent to the mile, and would just make a lot more sense to use. So that's why we convert these prefixes, and I like for you to learn how to do that. And it's really good through really all of your sciences, because a lot of times they give you these problems in science that have a particular prefix, and you have to get out of the prefix into a new prefix before you can do the problem. So I give you a way that's, I think, relatively easy to learn, and you're going to be using, it's a acronym. It's called My King Henry, and it helps you memorize the prefixes and how to work through them. Here is the acronym. You should memorize this, and that way you know the order that the letters fall in. So the acronym is, I'm going to read it the way you would memorize it, and then I'll tell you what each letter stands for. My King Henry died, and with the arrow now, I sometimes will write something here just so that you remember that the arrow needs to go between died and drinking. So you can come up with a word, some sort of word. My students last year used, let me erase this. They said that this helped them. They put by drinking. So my King Henry died by drinking chocolate milk under new power. The reason they want to put a word here is so that they can remember that arrow still needs to be there, because that arrow is a part of what we're going to memorize. So that helps you memorize the acronym. Well, what does each letter within the acronym stand for? These are all prefixes that are going to be attached to base units, the base units we were just looking at the SI page, to be able to make our number more reasonable or manageable. So capital M stands for mega, K for king is kilo, H is hecto, DA is for deca. When I say bi, that's the arrow, we call that base unit. Base unit is a unit without a prefix, so if you ever need to go to base, it's because you're looking at a unit that doesn't have a prefix attached. The next D on the other side of the arrow is drinking. The C is chocolate. The M for milli is the milk. Your under is micro, nu is nano, and power is pico. These right here are really small. That's why you see these little 3 X's, and I'll show you how those work in just a minute. These are really big. This is really big, right? Coming from kilo to mega 3 times the amount. Base unit, again, is a unit without a prefix, like meter, M, liter, L, gram, things like that. These are your bigger units. These are your smaller units. What does this 3x stand for? That means when you're going through and you're counting how many times to move the decimal place, which we're about to do, you're going to jump 3 times, whether it be to left or right, depending on where your decimal is going. So it'd be like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These, because there's so many 3x's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, so there's a bunch of jumps here. Okay. Okay, so what we're going to do are practice problems to help better understand how to convert between prefixes within the metric scale. So first, let's complete number 1A. Number 1A wants you to convert between 5 and DM is decimeter. If it's a D, an A, and then an M, it would be decameter. So we're doing 5 decimeters to meters. So what would that look like? So I'm going to get my pencil. You should do the same over, your documents. I'm going to take it from DM, which is right here, and I'm going to move it over 1 time to the left. And I'm talking about my decimal place. So I'm going to move my decimal place over 1 time to the left. And now my number is going to be, it started at 5. Here's your decimal place. And we need to move it over 1 time to the left because we had to move it over to base unit since this unit doesn't have a prefix. Now my new number is 0.5, and that's what you would write here on your answer. What about if you're going from milligram to gram? What would that look like? Okay, so, and I always say erase your arrows that you've been drawing in so you don't get confused. We're going to start now on milli, and we're going to go 1, 2, 3 times to the left. A lot of students get confused, and they're like, do we always end in base unit? No. You're going to end in whatever unit or prefix to the unit you need. So in this case, because they want you to end in grams, you're ending in base again, because base unit's any unit without a prefix. But if they want you to end in, megagram or something, then you would have to go ahead and keep going to that particular prefix. But they just want you to end with gram being our base. So we're going to take it from 9 milligrams, and we're going to go to grams. So I'm going to erase this, and I will show you my work. So we're starting at 9 milligrams. We just move it over 1, 2, 3 times. You put your new decimal place, and then you're going to put your zeros in these loops. Your new answer when you convert from milligram to gram would be 0.009 grams. So it's 0.009 grams. All right, so all this is you determining where you need to start, so make sure that you're starting in the right place, at the right prefix, because that gets a lot of people confused, and make sure you're ending in the appropriate prefix and that you go in the right direction. Let's do one that has the 3x so you guys can see that. Letter C. This wants you to go from 8 grams to micrograms. So we're going to go back to our chart. We're going to start in grams and go to micro. Okay, so I'm going to highlight so you guys can see what I'm talking about here. We're starting in grams right here, and we're going to go to micro. We're going to be moving our decimal place 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times to the right. So the decimal will move over 6 times to the right. All right, so now let's go down here. You guys can see it's already completed. So we're starting at 8 grams and we're going to be going to micrograms, and we're moving the decimal over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. We make our new decimal and we just add in the zeros where they need to be, and this gives us a new value of put your commas here, and you have 8 million micrograms for every 8 grams, okay? So the big thing here is to make sure that you guys are starting in the right place, ending in the right place, and again going in the right direction. When it comes to practicing on these, I'm going to point out what you guys need to actually complete, and there will be an answer key provided so you guys have the answers that you can check over. It's really important that you are taking the time to practice all of these so that you guys can get really comfortable with, converting between these prefixes. All right, so we're going to go through and I'll show you the things you need to complete. One other thing I'd like to show you are these M's. So you'll see that there's many different combination of M's that we can work with, and I want to make sure that you understand what they are and so that you don't get confused on the quiz. If you just have a M by itself, we call that a base unit, and that's meter. If you have 2 little m's, that's millimeter. If you have a big M and a little m, that's megameter. And if you have something right here that looks like an M or maybe even a U, it's actually a symbol for micro, and this is micrometer. So just make sure you know the combinations of M's. The first thing that you're going to start to see is that there's things that are highlighted. And so while you're working through these problems, the things that you need to complete are anything that's highlighted, and those are the things that you're going to be getting the answer key for. So on this particular page, you're going to be doing some word problems, and you'll see, like for number 2, for example, it says 1 cereal bar has a mass of 37 grams. What is the mass of 6 cereal bars? And is that answer more or less than 1 kilogram? So what you do is you take 37 grams and multiply it by 6 because you have 6 cereal bars. That will give you 222 grams. You can't compare a value that has a different unit. So if you're trying to compare grams and kilograms, it doesn't work. So you need to convert one or the other, whether it be grams or kilograms, so that the values match. I determined that I just wanted to convert grams to kilograms, so I went through with my chart. I moved my decimal over 3 times to the left. It gave me a new answer from 222 grams to 0.222 kilograms. And then I can determine whether or not that weighs more or less than 1 kilogram, because now the values and the units match. And you guys can see that here. You got kilograms here, kilograms here. So for all of these problems, a lot of these, they want you to convert one or the other so that you can compare values and give an answer. These right here, they want you to determine, it says, what unit would you use to determine the capacity, milliliter or liter. So depending on how big it is, will depend on if you want to use a liter or milliliter. Milliliter being smaller unit than liter, but both of these are measuring volume. For right here, it's saying circle the more reasonable measurement. Again, it's the same kind of thing we were talking about earlier. If you're measuring a really far distance, you're not going to use centimeters, right? You're going to use something bigger. So that's what these are all about. For this section, you're going to be matching your base units with what you're actually measuring. So for example, time, what would that go towards? Volume, what unit of measurement goes with volume. Maybe second, if you're trying to find seconds, that would be the SI unit for time, in which we went over all the SI units already. So just make sure that you're matching column 1 with column 2. And then at the bottom here, you'll see it says circle the two terms in which each group that are related. Explain how the terms are related together. So like for number 16, what two terms do you think would match? And the two terms would be Celsius degree and Kelvin, and it's because they both measure temperature, and that's how you would explain it. Mass doesn't really fit in with Kelvin or Celsius because they just are not the same type of unit of measurement. So that's what you're doing at the bottom here. This part right here is having you determine how many meters or millimeters are in a particular unit. So for like number 1, it says how many meters are in a kilometer. And you can get that from the chart, but you can also use My King Henry to determine that answer. On the next sheet, they want you to fill in the missing prefix. And then at the bottom here, circle the larger unit. So out of the two, which one's larger in terms of its prefix? And that's it. So this one has a lot of practice on it, and I want you to complete again anything that is highlighted. You'll have an answer key provided for you so that as you're working along, you can check your answers to make sure that what you're doing is correct. And if for some reason that you're not getting a particular problem right, you're trying to convert within the prefixes and you're still kind of confused, please let me know. Make sure that you're using My King Henry to be able to convert between those prefixes, that you're again starting and ending at the right prefix, that you're paying attention to how many times the decimal is moving, whether it be left or right, and that should kind of get you to where you need to be. But again, please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks. Bye.